Hey everyone, Marco here, the Bob Ross of ESO. The build I'm showing off today is one I think you're going to love. A versatile God mode Stamplar that will get your heart pumping as you take on the hardest content in Tamriel. Now, most of the builds I make are Magicka focused, since in my heart of hearts I'm a caster. But everyone should spice things up now and then, and this in-your-face Stamina Templar is a ton of fun to play, both in groups where it shines or as a solo character with a companion. Here's the thing, I'll be making two videos highlighting this Stamplar, one for combat and one for thieving. I'm currently leveling up all his Legerdemain and Thieves Guild stats, but he'll be ready to show off that side of his personality pretty soon. I've noticed something with other content creators. A lot of their builds are what I call one-trick ponies. I've especially looked at some other thieving builds, and 90% of them are just garbage. Because they're ill-conceived, they're made only to pick pockets and break into safe boxes and then run away. None of them can engage in a real fight, and they'd certainly be the weakest link in any group-related content. Now, don't you want to play characters that can do both things well? Because I do. One person I follow can't even pronounce Legerdemain, but I digress. Today's video will focus on the Templar side, but I wanted you to know that all the decisions that I've made for this build go way beyond that one facet, which is why for this build, your race must be Khajiit. You seldom see race being a factor in a build, but in this case, Khajiit is a must because of the thieving passives. Now 50 of your attribute points should go into stamina, and the remainder go into magicka. This is to help our sustain, since we'll be using a variety of abilities, both magic and stamina based. This Stamplar also needs to be a vampire, so go get bit. We'll be using one scribed ability because I think they're fun, and this one will be a scribed weapon ability, so you won't see a ton of other people using it. It'll help pull the enemies in close so that we can eviscerate them. The other thing I'm doing in this build is using mythic items for specific situations. You'll swap out the mythic item depending on what activity you're currently doing, so level up those antiquity skills. Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. And by the way, I've listened to you guys, and at the end of this video, I've written out the guide so that you can take screenshots and have all the details of this build handy. So, you're welcome. We're using a mythic, so the one-piece monster set is the good old Slimecraw helm for its weapon and spell stats. Get it in medium weight if you can. The first 5-piece gear set we'll be using is Deadly Strike. It's a PvP set that can be purchased with alliance points, but of course the easiest way to get Deadly is to just buy it off the guild traders. Especially with how the ESO economy is currently crashing, you can probably buy your Deadly gear for a song right now. We're going to be dual wielding, so you'll need 2 Deadly Strike daggers. Then add a ring and a necklace and any one piece of body armor. Here are the important stats on Deadly Gear. 2 items adds weapon and spell damage, 3 items adds 657 crit chance, 4 items adds more weapon and spell, and 5 items, that's the big bonus, here's the key, it increases your damage over time and channeled attacks by 15%. Now that huge 15% changes everything and makes this guy a killing machine. And obviously the abilities that we're going to be slotting will complement this amazing armor, using both dots and channeling. The second 5-piece set is all body worn. We're using Pillar of Nirn, which is a fairly easily acquired dungeon set coming out of Falkreath Hold. Feel free to use Order's Wrath, a crafted set, until you've collected all your Pillar of Nirn pieces. Here are the stats on Pillar. 2 items add 657 crit chance. Now remember, we're already getting another 657 crit chance coming from the Deadly. 3 items adds yet another 657 crit chance, 4 items adds weapon and spell damage, and the 5-piece bonus does this. When you deal damage, you create a fissure under the enemy, dealing 800 bleed damage to all enemies within 2.5 meters, causing them to bleed for an additional 2400 bleed damage over 10 seconds. So that's a dot. And remember, our Deadly Gear adds another 15% to dot attacks, so you can truly see how these 2 armor sets, they work perfectly together. I'm using the prismatic enchants whenever possible because they buff health, magicka, and stamina. But if you don't have Akijo ruins and don't want to buy them, feel free to mix up a few magicka enchants and a few stamina enchants. All the body armor should have the divine trait. I put Bloodthirsty on all the jewelry because I know I'm going to be using these sets a lot. My first dagger is Precise, and the second dagger is Sharpened. The food we'll be using is Bewitched Sugar Skulls, and the potion is the Blue Tristats. Now I switch this up when the character goes thieving. The Mundus Boon is naturally the thief. Okay, let's briefly cover those mythics. I have 3 different mythic rings for this character, which I switch around depending on what he's up to. Ring of the Pale Order for solo content, which is hard, so I mostly save that for arenas or the Infinite Archives if one of the bosses is really difficult. In group content or regular, PvE content, I switch it to the Oaken Soul ring for the many buffs that gives. Now for thieving, I use Ring of the Wild Hunt for the added speed. My firm belief is that the developers designed mythic items to be used in this way, situationally, swapping them out depending on the content you're tackling. Armor is a different story, as I believe there are less than a dozen armor sets in this game that are worth keeping. And remember, there are upwards of 500 different armor sets now. Most of them are garbage. This is more or less a 1-bar build, since you guys like that flavor and that we're going to be using the Oaken Soul primarily. However, when we use Pale Order or are thieving, we can activate that back bar for some vampire abilities and other goodies. For now, we're just going to highlight the 5 abilities and the ultimate. The first slot is our SCRIBED ability, called Leashing Knife. It uses the dual-wield weapon, Grimoire, Traveling Knife. We add that to the Pull Focus script, Class Mastery for our signature, and Off Balance for the affix. Obviously, you should feel free to tinker with this for what works with your individual playstyle. I like the pull feature to bring enemies in, and it does over 3,000 damage, gives us nearly 1,500 armor, some weapon and spell damage, and knocks enemies off balance. So there's a lot going on with this one instant stamina ability. The second ability we're slotting is Puncturing Sweep. That's our Templar Spammable, a channeled ability, so deadly armor buffs it. Nearly 4,000 damage, it slows the enemy down, and most importantly, it heals us for 36% of the damage that we do. The third slot is for Blazing Spear, another Magicka ability. I usually start off with this one. It hits for 8,500 damage in the area of effect, then has a 10-second dot for nearly 800 damage a tick. It also immobilizes enemies done in the first hit, and it has a good group synergy. The fourth is Power of the Light, a stamina ability that deals 4,000 damage, and then after 6 seconds it bursts for another 4,500 damage. Our fifth ability is Flying Blade from our dual wield line, a stamina ability that does 5,000 damage, can interrupt, set off balance, and stun enemies, and then if pressed again on the same target will deal 7,500 damage. And last but not least, our ultimate is Solar Disturbance, a dot spell that does 5,000 damage every second for 10 seconds. This also has a cool synergy when you're in group play. Again, there are at least 2 flex spots in these abilities. I tinkered with a bunch of different choices, and actually almost every single one of them worked pretty well. I did see my magic sustain being the most difficult thing to stabilize, but popping a potion and trying to do more heavy attacks and less button smashing fixed that issue. Now remember, this build isn't just a run-in-the-mill Stamplar. He's also set up to be a master thief, and I'm going to show you guys how to complete that in a second video. And if you have a chance, please subscribe to this channel for ESO content. We're heading towards 6,000 subs, so maybe the ESO fam and developers will start to notice me, although I'm not holding my breath. I also have an entertainment channel started called Red Carpet Raccoon. I'd love for you guys to go sub over there. Thanks for all of your support, and as always, I'm Marco. Have fun with this in-your-face Stamplar, be kind to other players, and keep exploring. Now hang on for that written guide, it's coming next.